Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.
Well, first things, Paul, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Have I been rambling on, muted?
Basically, you've just been miming. The Wigan joke, everyone's been at it. Unmute. And I could see you. I was trying to sort of read your lips and think, can I do a summary now of what you said? But unfortunately, you're either going to have to do it again.
Well, do you know what? I can't be bothered. I've already had a show. What I'm basically saying was I've already had a show. I was talking about the pushing for the jibby jabs and that's coming on, that nobody's connecting them to the football incidents that we've had with the crowds and with more players that are having these medical episodes again recently. Right. I know that they've just done the nasal flu ones in the schools because everybody's ill. People I know are teachers and everything. And nobody's joining these dots, or nobody can be bothered to join them. So that's basically what I was saying. Where are we going to go with this? We've got hurricanes in Florida. We've got a massive amount of stuff happening with Israel and Iran. And, things are still not, people are still not seemingly changing. But I've already had technical issues. You've had technical issues. And then right then when I might have realised, Owen Martin's calling me on Facebook. So everything went off.
It's all going off.
We must be in the right place, mate. That's why.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you did a good summary of your summary then.
Oh, very good. I'm glad I got it out. Do you know what? He thinks he's a reek comedian, this fella,
No, I do like. I think Jimmy's got a good angle, bless him, there, with that one. Not taking sides around Paul, but, he's obviously agreed with everything you've said, and he says it's a first, but that's a good thing. So basically,
Owen was ringing me to tell me I was muted.
yeah, there you go.
Brilliant.
So I tell you what, right? Because obviously you listed a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, and the world's a big place. So everyone's living in like a locality, and this is one of the issues with the world today. It's like hyper real. So the world's been shrunk down really in size, even though it's huge. We all have access to it at the same time. So there is some like profound implications of that. So really, I'm looking at things, regardless of what you think of the likes of Nigel Farage, Donald Trump, Reform UK, and all this. One of the interesting things that came out of their conference, a few people have been speaking, and one of the emphasis seems to be, and Jordan Peterson agrees with this as well, you've got to look at this balance between the individual, the family, the community, with basically the neighborhood, and the larger society. Like, so for example, your own country and then the world. So their main emphasis is like individual, family, community, country, right? And it's an interesting thing that we've been talking about every week. So I thought it's an interesting way to try and frame it, because we're looking at strategies. Now, we tend to realize that people power is a great thing, but none of us are able to mobilize each other. And the problem that we've got, as we've said many a time, is how would we organize? And if we try to organize, of course, the powers that be would shut us down. We realized with the police service under COVID that they tried their best to shut that down and then ignore it. So they'll try everything to sideline it. But it's important, I think, to get the balance, because obviously I focus a lot on individual psychology, not just individual psychology, but it's a big part of it. Because if the individuals have no confidence, and if we've undergone a demoralisation strategy from 77th Brigade, amongst others, and the whole, inside job that we've got going on, they're propagandising us, they're demoralising us. If you look at what Keir's strategy is, he's hit the ground running with draconian policies, trying to silence any dissent. So from our perspective, and I know there's one or two from America and maybe other places abroad, but most of us here are from the UK, and we're dealing with specific problems that we encounter in our life every day in the UK. So we can imagine it like trying to go on a rally. I know what you think about protest, Paul, and I agree, but some people go on rallies, they get a sense of togetherness, they go down to London so many times a year or somewhere else, and they come together, they get a feeling of community. But it's for a couple of hours, a few hours, and then they go home. So it's all right having a feel-good factor, which is good, but if a feel-good factor becomes a substitute for real change, so the problem that we've got is if we can't organise, going on a march or whatever makes you feel good but doesn't change anything necessarily, might be better than nothing. When we leave these marches, how do we then come together and actually, as a community or as a group, bring about change? And none of us have worked it out yet. We've got the Light Truth paper as well that people can read, come together, write articles for. So we've got like these cultural hubs. Like you'll be going, I don't know if you are doing, but I know Vobes was going to be on today, wasn't he, Richard?
Yeah, I couldn't make it today. Yeah, I couldn't make it today and get back for here. So something had to give. I had a few things to do after coming back home. So
yeah, but even that, like connected with community assemblies, people meeting, motivational speaker. Richard Vobes has got high circulation. You were on there. Over 20,000 views. So that's all traction. It's all brilliant, right? So we're not going to disrespect that in any way. It's positive. But when we look at the actual change that gets consolidated from these things, it seems to be like a very, very slow process of raising awareness. So for me, I'll always come back to what we have to do on an individual level. So I suppose before we get into the meat of some of the things that have gone on, I had a bit of a metaphor in my mind before we came on. I was thinking about it earlier. And I was thinking, what was the most helpful way for us all to be able to view what we're actually trying to do, or how we can best be as effective as an individual? If we can't come together yet and mobilise as individuals, and I've talked about this in a roundabout way, but I thought there could be quite a useful way of viewing it, which is if you view your own life like a blank canvas and you've got a bunch of paints, even if you're not a Rembrandt, you don't consider yourself to be a particularly artistic or creative person, and you think, I've never picked up a paintbrush before, but there's a blank canvas there. And we also know that there's lots of other canvases that other people have designed. So think about the elites, the oligarchs, the power players in society. They're trying to paint a picture. They're trying to create a scene, an image, and they want to fit all of us inside of this wonderful image that they've painted for us, right? So that's what's happening all the time through media, false representations. They frame reality. They talk about climate change, which is absolute scam, as we know. They're painting a picture of reality that's not real. So for me, our starting point should be realizing that we've got a blank canvas, which is our life, and we don't have to chip into somebody else's canvas. We don't have to fit into somebody else's idea about what this perfect picture is. We can create our own. And I think whenever we lose sight of that, we get distracted and we start looking at the picture that they've painted, try to tweak it, try to say that's wrong, that's crap, tear it up, burn it down, do this. We're getting distracted because our biggest resource, like I've said before about human resources, is ourselves. So we've got to develop and cultivate ourselves. And if you see your life as a painting, you've got control of the palette, the paintbrushes, there's the canvas. So for me, I think that no matter what we talk about, because I think at the beginning, there were a few people asking questions pretty much in the chat before we even came on air about, oh, well, have you got any tips about how I can do this? I'm going to court. And we know that that's a part of it. Individual cases, people facing specific issues with corporates. But what we're doing, we can't address all those as a Q&A. You'd be here all night, Paul, dispensing advice to individuals on cases. So we've got to get the balance between the broad brushstrokes of the broader cultural picture, which is this big painting, but also what individual power I've got, what responsibility, what power, what scope. So the first thing is to not get distracted, to not get taken off on a tangent, not get obsessed with the picture that the oligarchs are painting, and realize every time, look, I'm a creative person, I've got skills, I've got talents, I'm developing myself, I'm painting my own picture. I think that's the really big problem that we've not been doing. We've had our eye taken off the ball, and all these events going on, yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of news going on in the world every minute of every day, Paul, and we could talk about that every minute of every day. Some of the things that some oligarch has done, stitching this up and controlling and manipulating this. This is why a lot of people are getting demoralized, because there's a lot of bad news out there. So that's getting focused on. It demotivates, and there's lots of positives that we could focus on. But if we focus on positives that other people are talking about, it's not the same as the agenda we set ourselves. So for me, I wanted to start off by saying we've got to bring it back every time to, if I feel disempowered, I'm going to court and I feel like I can't achieve much, then I want to go to an expert to help me. I understand that, but that's not going to get us anywhere. And I think you said that a number of times as well. People are going to have to find a way of developing that confidence to be able to step out and fight some of these battles themselves. Maybe sometimes, yeah, with assistance, but not with other people doing it for them. So I think the bottom line is, just to reiterate what this channel and this podcast is about, it's about us all coming together, other people coming on and speaking, sharing the perspective, but building ourselves up, having a positive vision, working on ourselves and developing our confidence. That's the way we've got to go.
Yeah, you mentioned Starmer and what he's brought in and stuff like that. People who voted for him, Alex, they're the ones now that want him out. But the manifesto will still be there. Whoever now steps into those shoes of Keir Starmer's, it doesn't matter now. He's proved his worth. He covered up the Jimmy Savile stuff. He made sure that there was no prosecution going to happen from that through lack of evidence. It's all very strange now that it's a given thing. The likes of me and you can remember the age where Jim will fix it. What kind of stuff has really gone on that we don't know about? And yet we're putting our trust and our money and our ignorance, unfortunately, into these people. And then we look at celebrities and stuff like that. These are paid mouthpieces to become influencers. So when you say about people creating their realities, that would take thinking and leadership. And if you look at the general population now, there isn't any of them. And they know that. And they know that because there's no leaders, there's no organisation. They've got anybody who can bring something to a leadership all isolated everywhere. Because it's not one man or one woman that's got the answers to this stuff. Not in this world anyway. There's the answers in this world. And you look at this world, it's the perfect set of lies. It's littered with truth, and you've got to sort all that out. But you're far too busy to be able to pull things to bits. COVID did change that, because when that lockdown happened, Alex, I know people who absolutely blew their minds. They're coming up to you and saying, they were saying things like, "Hey," people who don't know me that well saying, "Have you ever heard of chemtrails?" No, tell me more. Well, do you know what they do? They put aluminium sulfate in the clouds and they warm them up with really low frequency and they can burst clouds. And then they can do I know, yeah. And that was like, you're talking 15 years ago, I was looking at that stuff. Many people was. And we were all nutters. But now the mainstream people have got something new, because that isolation got them to look at things they would never normally look at. You can't say that didn't wake some of the people up. It's just now they're trying to play catch up and they want to do everything now, just like we all did, Alex. We wanted to do it all and change things, and we learned how hard this is, and we knew that we needed numbers. But now you've got people who are bringing those numbers in, who do want to do things, but they don't know what directions to go in. And then you've still got the ones who want people to do it for them. Some have been guided very poorly. I've known a lot of people over these years, and they've followed somebody who's never even done anything, never been into a courtroom, but they've got all these theories. I don't want to associate with those kinds of people. I don't go and talk to people about trusts, Alex. I think trusts are a great asset, but I don't know how to work one properly, how to set it up or anything. So I wouldn't do that, and I certainly wouldn't go on a circuit peddling these words. We've all been taught to be of this world, and most of us are reactionary and not thinking. So when you react, you're behind already, because you wait for something to happen. Oh, it's a nice day, let's walk, let's do this, do that. What about the previous day? You couldn't plan for something. There's no thinking, no thoughts about anything, because we're all kept too bloody busy. I see it in my family, my friends. They don't want to be thinking when they come home after a 12-hour day, mate. But the system works perfectly for that. And it's how we break that. That lockdown did something, but is it enough? Is it in time? Because all I can see now, Al, is they are ramping everything up. We swapped Starmer for who? How many did we have after Boris Johnson? Was it 2, 3? And they all pushed the same shit.
Yeah, 2.
What changes?
Well, obviously nothing from the point of view of those people who don't think like you said. But I mean, we've got to be creative, as I've said before. So, for example, as we know, you talked about Keir Starmer, right? Bless him, our PM, and you talked about Jimmy Savile. Well, we know that Jimmy Savile had an influence over Keir when he was young, and we also probably know that that's why Keir told us to release the sausages.
Yeah, the sausages are unreal, isn't it?
Jimmy Savile was good at releasing the sausages, and in a very, so clearly he's making a plug for sausage release. But many a true word spoken, right? Because what I'm getting at here is that can be turned into a meme. Just like they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. The Trump thing that he said, debating Kamala, they turned it into this. What's he called? The Kiffer. What's his name? That guy. It's gone viral, and he's done that song. And millions of people have seen it, and you think, well, he doesn't take a position that's pro-Trump or anti-Trump, so it's not like fully politicized. You're left to make your own mind up.
But it's the eating the cats and the dogs one.
Yeah. So he took that, and he turned it into something funny. Now, the interesting thing about that is millions of people watched it, and it's probably going to be more effective than 100,000 word PhD thesis on the technical rights and wrongs and the state of the world, because people they can relate to it. So look on Facebook, if you post to your friends anything that's serious on that platform, regardless of being censored by Facebook, it's a tumbleweed moment. Virtually nobody likes it, nobody engages, but cute kitten photos, everybody does. Now, we can complain about that all day and say it's because people don't think they don't take life seriously. But we can also say maybe we need to pitch in at that level. I know memes have been done before, but, obviously we got Wigan Joker on, bless him, Jimmy, and he's used, we interviewed him and he spoke with us. And his use of comedy and writing plays, and we had that whole thing about creativity. But, at the end of the day, we can use things like that. Like Keir Starmer, he's a complete fool. He doesn't have a particularly high intelligence. So there've been some politicians, right, who are very smart. But there have also been some who are really quite ordinary, if not dumb. And if you look at what happened with Biden, they wanted somebody senile, and it's a perfect description because they just want a puppet. So the less content that there is in that life, the more they can fill it with their own crap. That's why they don't like Trump. Regardless of what you think of Trump, he's his own man. We know Kamala Harris isn't. We know no president or prime minister is their own person. Now, if you look at Viktor Orban in Hungary, he's his own man. If he says it's Monday, it's Monday. If Trump says Monday, it's Monday. And regardless of what you think, and everyone says, oh yeah, Trump's dodgy, this person's dodgy, whatever. I don't really care. The bottom line is what we need to see, regardless of who's right and who's wrong and what shade of truth they've got. Is this person a real human being? Does this person stand on their own 2 feet, right, and get real? Yeah, I know raconteurs, yeah, he's saying here Biden isn't senile, he's dead. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, that's an interpretation, right? So we can say that, and no disrespect, he might be dead, and there might be a few people walking around with Biden masks on. But the answer to that is, so what? Who cares? Does it really matter? Because I don't think it does. It doesn't. Even that's a distraction. So what? So what if he's dead? What difference does it make? Do you know what I mean? So I think we've just got to get our priorities clear. Some facts matter, and some facts matter less. And I think if we take our attention away from what we're capable of changing, and we focus on them or an external situation, we won't change anything.
I went to, now I've never been to any political conferences or anything like that, right? But I went to Manchester to do an interview with a woman. What's her name now? Her name slips my mind at the minute. But she interviewed me, and she interviewed David Noakes as well at the same time. There was a party conference going on of the Tories in Manchester. And after we did the interviews, we went to sit in on one of these talks they were doing. And the MP that was in there, or the parliamentarian that was in there, was a Tory MP called John Redwood, right? And they had an MC to make all the political jokes, and point people out and wave the papers like they do to get the crowd going. And then this John Redwood, there was a few speakers on, and then John Redwood gets up, but he'd been sat there like this, Alex. That's how he was until it was his turn. And then when he was announced, you saw him almost like take on character. And then he stood at the podium as if he was in Parliament. And then that was it. He switched off again when it finished. And when I was walking out, I ended up walking out with him and walked up the road. And as we walked up the road, we went around this corner under the bend. It's near the Comedy Club in Manchester, where it was. And we walked around this corner, and on this corner was 2 homeless people with basically the bedroom. They had a washing line up and clothes and everything. And he walked past them, just looking up at the sky, just looking about, looking like that. He didn't look down at the floor or to side to side. He just kept it up. And I walked alongside him and I was staring at him. And I couldn't believe just how switched off he was. He was completely oblivious. It was very strange. It was almost like he'd just been programmed to do that day, and then, like a homing pigeon, go back to the hotel where they were all staying. Very surreal experience, that.
Yeah. I'm just putting a few questions in chat. I've noticed that they've come back. So obviously Taylor doesn't agree,
Agree with
unsurprisingly,
what?
with the position where I said it doesn't really matter. He's saying it does matter. He says we're watching a movie. Now this might be right. It might be right, but the problem is we can't know. And if people believe a position just because somebody shares it, the problem that we've got with all media, and this is media that we're doing now, everyone who contributes on here is part of media for other people who are watching, is if you just make a claim, yeah, you'll try and like find evidence to back it up and point it out, but it's really as simple as that. So if people just believe claims and then run with them, then we're missing something very important. So I don't think we can afford to be sloppy with stuff like that. But Jen's asked the question, right? So can you see it, Paul? I'm just looking at it for the first time here. I'm on Universal Credit and they're charging me DWP overpayment. I found some info today that there is a point in the books which says they can't change if I'm
Can't charge if on benefits. Are you thinking? Have your batteries
yeah,
run out?
I'm trying to work out. I'm trying to respond. I'm trying to work out because obviously, like we were saying earlier about answering questions, you never know what questions are going to come. You've got a technical question.
It sounds to me like DWP have overpaid her, so they're taking it out of a universal credit. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
If that's in their terms and conditions that they can't take it out, she needs to find that section and show it. Yeah, if she can, if that's the true thing, I'm not. It's not my forte, DWP and benefits. Although I can see myself brushing up on it pretty soon.
They tend to give people, from my experience, they tend to give people bridging loans. If they overpay, your view might be that it's their fault, they overpaid you and you spent it, and what can you do? But they'll just say, well, that's a budgeting issue. We appreciate the problem. So, here's a loan. I will let you pay it off at so much. I'll only take so much off you. But I don't think there's any universe in which that money, that overpayment, is you're just going to go, it's all right then, we messed up. So they won't do that. They'll get it back. The question is, can you get that money that they're taking back off paid back in your terms? And that depends how much they've overpaid you. If it's £100, it's different than if it's £2,000. And obviously we don't know the figures here. So you need to have some sense of what the figures are.
Yeah, it gets into very vague areas when if you've read it in a book, then it must be legislative as well. So you need to find the legislation that applies to that particular section on overpayments. If there's a remedy there, then yeah, by all means, use it.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of this, right? With me versus the system. If we look at what corporates are doing, corporates are trying to fleece us all the time if they can, offering less and less service for more and more money. Anytime you cross a line, they can put an admin charge on it. So obviously, in a way, it's us against the system. You're fighting against a corrupt system. But within that system, there are some organisations that are still trying to have some sort of ethics, some sort of integrity. So I think the first thing is we've got to sit ourselves down and go, look, really, am I entitled to this? When everyone started doing the direct debit clawbacks just because they could, on a technicality. And then people were saying things like, oh, well, I bought these televisions, right? And I'd rather not pay for them. So I'll do a direct debit clawback and I'll just get my money back and keep the telly. Now, if people want to look at themselves and think that that's like a legitimate way to proceed, because you still got to have your own personal ethics. You can justify it by going, oh, the system's all messed up. They're exploiting. They're all corporate scumbags. They're all capitalists. They're all exploiting me. So I should have everything for free. Like including, we're not just talking about gas and electric here. That's a different argument. We're talking about like consumer goods, things that you've actually bought that you wanted, and then you go, can I get out of paying this? Who'd rather not have everything for free? Who'd rather not be able to go into Curry's and have a free telly?
Well, we're not that far off a utopian society like that. It's just we are taught a certain aspect of the way to live. And to live like what you're talking about, Alex, because believe me, if the economy was to collapse tonight, if everybody got up and went and did the jobs as normal, from the growing to the picking to the delivering to the do all what they did, nobody'd be any the wiser, because airline pilots could still fly to where they're going, have a little bit of holiday and bring people. It wouldn't matter. We could do that. It's just nature. We are told that the nature of ourselves isn't that. Well, we're taught what we are from birth. And you were talking again about how do you produce yourself into this reality when you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen them, they're arguing about the shape, not arguing, but they're debating the shape of the earth. Again, you do make a point that it doesn't really matter, but it's another piece of information where you've got doubt because there's nothing factual. It's the same with the Biden being dead. If you think there's a saviour coming, we've already won, then I would say let's be a little bit more sceptical about that, because when they want us to have a hero, they will provide one for us. They've bragged about it in so many writings. And I've been fooled once or twice already, Alex, so I'm not going to put my eggs in any basket that a bloke's carrying, lad.
Yeah, well, there you go. The long and short of it. Thomas has asked a question here in the chat. Is there any way we could start up a business and set up our own council through government with the profits we made? Right, well, first part, is there any way we could start up a business? Yes. The question is who the we is. And that is something where people could come together and start to build businesses and have business ideas.
Sounds like you're talking about a co-op.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, it looks very much like
one that we had, that we did locally, that worked perfectly when I lived in a bloody wealthy town that did things like that, and now we live in a town full of empty shops and pound shops. That's what they've done to us, Alex. And when you point the finger at them, all they're going to do is turn the finger back and point at you. Well, we were trying to balance the books, and you never allowed us that. You kept promising to do something, and you never did it. That's all they've got to say. And then when you say, well, I didn't know, well, ignorance of that's no excuse. So I'd rather know the real truthful nuts and bolts before rubber masks and things like that. As you said, that could all well be true. There's definitely some dodgy mask stuff going on. You've got the CIA doing TED Talks on it. They tell us this stuff. They tell us what they're good at. You know, so to say that I've got it, I know what the truth is now, this world has nothing to offer in that way. All you've got is, for the information you can get, is questions. Can they be answered to a degree that it works, it's perfect? Is it factual? Do we know it's factual? Well, there's so many things that I either thought was fact because everybody knows it, or it hadn't even entered the realm of my thought because it doesn't enter my head for stuff like that at that point. Yeah. And it's only when it comes to your face and you start to ask the questions, you know, it's like pulling on a thread. All of a sudden, you've took the entire sleeve off and you're saying, there's an arm there. There's an arm under I didn't know there was an arm. And all of a sudden, you can't forget that there's an arm under that sleeve. Well, what if there's something under the arm? What is it if there's something under the skin? Yeah. So you've got to get through to the bone marrow of what you've been taught. And if you can't do that with humility, pride is the greatest of all, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I got another metaphor for those people who perhaps couldn't resonate as much with this idea about a blank canvas, your own paints. If they don't like the aesthetic and artistic metaphor, the other one is, in this issue, is imagine yourself like a wolf. And the thing about that is, in wolf packs, a lot of the time, if there's a dispute, a submissive wolf will expose its jugular vein to the more powerful wolf as an act of submission. And of course, then that more powerful wolf accepts that display, that gesture, that ritual as a rite of passage. Like, yeah, you can continue to live because you've submitted to me. But as you see, like with older wolves, as they get older and the younger one starts to come through, eventually there is usually a challenge. So we're all wolves, and we've got, and I don't mean that in the sense of being ferocious and voracious predators ready to rip out the throats of anybody who looks at us the wrong way. I don't mean it in that sense. But what I mean is we've all got that potential wolf warrior inside of us. And it just looks to me as if too many of us have said there's a big wolf at the top that's bigger than us. And we've just shown our neck to this wolf as an act of submission. And what we have to do is acknowledge that as a wolf, even if we can't take out the head wolf, we can show our teeth, we can build ourselves up, we can become better at what we do, and eventually a challenge can come. So again, I think we've got to focus on, if you imagine that metaphor, are we just submitting even though we've got real tools by which we could bring some challenge? Are we just going to roll over, or are we going to develop ourselves and our ability to be combative without, I don't mean violence. So we think about things like that, tearing something limb from limb. People think of bloodshed and violence. I don't mean that. I mean a metaphor of strength and resilience, perseverance, because that's what we need. Because what demoralization does, it grinds you down over time. It's a war of attrition. And that's what they've done to everybody. I think someone said in the chat it's a divide and conquer strategy, and they've been successful. So the only people who can reverse that is us, really. And we won't be able to organise prematurely.
Many people have been institutionalized, though. They can't see the prison bars, but they're in a prison because this system and everything in it is all that they know. And it depends on how many people are willing to fight for the system that's doing this to them. This is the epitome of Stockholm syndrome, what we're in. The people love their captors. They vote for them. Who's going to hate us more than this one? It's anybody who uses that old saying that, if you didn't vote, you have no say in the matter. You have no opinion. Look at the people who voted for Keir Starmer. Those people now want him out because he's shown what he is. But who are you going to replace him with? And what will they do to change the Labour manifesto that is what it is? And you've got him for another 3.5 years. There's something not right. It's rotten, lad.
Well, I was thinking recently, because anyone can talk from the front, and it's easy to underplay how serious these issues are. So I don't mean to be, glib about this. But realistically, there was talk with this budget that's going to come that the low-hanging fruit, the government will go for the low-hanging fruit to try and take money. So obviously, they've already alienated the pensioners with the winter fuel payment. I think it's a very bold move. You think, are you trying to wind people up? Are you trying to create? It's a very odd thing, right? So we can think about that. But obviously, what they've also talked about is that they're going to remove the single person discount on council tax. Right? Now, there's no rationale for that. It's a good example of arbitrary authority. Low-hanging fruit, right? Well, all those single people, all the people who are not single, who've got families and stuff who are paying the full amount, realistically, they won't give a crap. They'll just go, thank God I dodged a bullet here. So even on Band Air, that's about 300 quid a year. That's £25 a month for all single people. And they're probably not too bothered, because those people who aren't single, they'll just go, whew, fantastic. But, if you live on your own in your own place, so I'm not a single person, but I do live in a single occupancy dwelling, for which I get a 25% council tax discount. So I have to make a decision, and I'm mulling this over, that if in the budget they do this, it might be my tax, because you can't fight every battle. Let's face it. We fought a battle recently that was very draining against a utility company, Paul, and it took several of us. So you have to be very careful about the battles you choose. But I think I probably will fight the council tax battle on the grounds that if they can't justify why they're taking that single person discount off me, then I will decide and have a think about what I want to come back with. I don't know what the argument will be yet, but we've all got to start somewhere. And if we don't ask the question and we don't challenge them, then they'll just go, it's easy. We'll just bring this policy in, low-hanging fruit. Everyone will accept it because they don't know what to do. If we start rattling our sabres a little bit and challenging and asking some questions, at least we'll give them something to think about.
Well, when you talk about council tax, Alex, like I say, we've always gone for the simple stuff. It's based on a commercial property tax. Your house, has no revenue coming through that property, no
Yeah.
stock, no storage for a business.
Yeah.
So what are they taxing? There's nothing to tax. That's where you need to start with this. That's got to be the foundation. But what they can throw at you is, well, this shopkeeper registered this property on such a day. And it can be, yes, it can be, but it isn't.
Yeah, but they won't do that publicly, Paul.
Well, this is what I'm saying, though.
This is the point. They
I
won't
can't-
do that publicly.
But I can't see what other justification. If they sit on that, Alex, and they're sat in a courtroom and they sit on that, and you don't touch it, that stands. So that's the fundamental. That's what we saw in our case.
Yeah.
When he found out that he could say at that point, this moment in time, they're capable of being commercial. I'm not listening to anything more. End of case. Now, what we'd have to do is to start again, get back to a judge. If it's a different judge, hope he goes against another judge, and hopefully we've bound it that he can't, that he's got to give it us. But that for me, it took 2-3 years, but it was so simple. If you're going to go in and argue why you're taking a discount off me for a tax that isn't applicable, then maybe it's another route, Al, that you can stand on our case with and say, well, what's it mean? Does it mean like there's only one fella that works here, so we get a single discount on being a one-man business? You know, is it that type of thing? Those are the things that would be helpful. Standing there saying no contract or you're funding terrorists or something like that, you might as well talk to the cat.
No, Luke, I totally agree. Right? Objectively and technically, if we can, we should always take the shortest route, generally, to get the result we need and the most logical path. But I think what we're looking at here is disempowered, demoralized people. Like, how many times have you had a person who didn't know how to get out of a situation, right? They tried everything. And by trying everything, they worked out on their path all the methods that don't work until they found the one that did. Now, that type of learning, see, nobody learns. If you get everyone's a perfectionist and goes for the pinnacle straight away and say, oh, yeah, I got this solution in this book. So I just went to the book and implemented the solution. None of the experience that's required to get them to have the grasp, because understanding comes from experience, which is all based on learning, and all learning comes from trial and error, which means if you don't fuck up, I'm sorry for the French, but if you don't, then a lot of the time, you don't understand the processes thoroughly enough in your own experience. You're not able then to make sense of them to other people, and you've not got the confidence to battle. Every time you win a battle by operating principle, having learned what doesn't work and then try something else and then that does work, then you can kind of say, yeah, actually, this is a hard fought battle. I've won. I've worked it out. I can see a little bit more of how the jigsaw pieces come together. Then you can start talking to other people. But again, not telling them, oh, I did this. This is the right way to do it. So you need to do it that way as well. Because they won't be able to do it that way. Because where they're at in their journey, they're still trying themselves to figure out all the pieces of their particular puzzle. So I think we've got to have a model that doesn't look too much on external solutions, because, yeah, external solutions are important, but it's the internal driver of a person's own life that will use that solution or fail to use it. So we've got to look at both for me, Paul. We've got to look at the optimal solutions and use the best ones if we can, but we have to acknowledge that there's going to be a lot of trial and error. A lot of people are going to make a lot of mistakes, but by trying and by learning that way, the foundations every individual will have will be much better than just going to some textbook or going to some person who knows and trying to implement it, because there's too big a jump for them. So I think people just got to start asking questions, whatever they are. Start asking questions, start asking difficult questions. If we don't do that, we're not doing anything.
I can't disagree with what you're saying, mate. And it's just, I can't get away from the fundamentality that all the properties have been indicated to be at least capable of being commercial.
Yeah.
That means if we change that factor,
Yeah.
however, I don't know how, whether we could change that registry and get your house put into the private, because once that's put in the private, there's no longer a customer or an occupier that's going to be there. it's going to be Alex, the king of that castle. That's my reckoning of what, when we were talking with David Robinson about the constitutional and common law. I thought, well, if I only go into Mr. Paul Webster mode when I'm in commerce, so potentially when I'm buying a house, I can buy it as Mr. Paul Webster because of the commercial factor, but there's got to be an entity using that commerce. But we're in the system where it pretends that these persons act of their own volition. A piece of paper just suddenly manifests things. It's a silliness that we've been taught that is true, and that's the hard spell to break, Alex. It's hard to break through that shell that has been cocooned round people to stop the simplicity of it. What's going on, going through. I was trying to help a girl understand earlier on that she couldn't get her head around this gyro thing, and it's just basics. That if you employ somebody to run your shop and they're buying stock, they've got to replace that with a receipt. Well, they've spent some of your money on gas. So rather than you pay again because you've already paid, so they can balance the books, they can say, you've metered this, this is for the gas usage of your area, everybody's metered, we can balance that for the private and for the commercial. And I think she started to get it because it's so simple to understand. I'm not saying it's easy to go and find the sections and quote them and do da-da-da, but you need a concept of understanding before you know what you're going looking for. You mentioned it earlier. If you don't know what you're looking for, then you've got to start asking the questions. And when you start asking the questions, some people will laugh at you, but there's no such thing as a silly or a stupid question. If you don't know and you don't ask, then it's always going to be a silly question, isn't it? You've got to start like a child. My mum used to always say to me, I'm bloody sick of you. You only say, why, what for? Why'd you do that? You taught me to do that. That's what I used to say to her. You taught me to. She said, well, I'm bloody sick of it. That's what she'd say. I had to know, I go and do this. Why? You want to know why you're going doing something. Otherwise, you just go and do it, and then you point to, well, he told me to do it. In the same breath, my mum could say, well, if your mate jumped off a cliff, would you? We can't keep pointing the finger and blaming everybody. We can see where our information's come from. I could sit and cry and mope and point at my mum and dad's picture and say, you people lied to me. You've set all this up for me. And they were the ones that were fooled as well. So there's a bigger picture here, Alex, than bank gyros and gas. And it's so much bigger. You can see the evil that is operating in this world. You see the bloodlines that operate these wheels that turn this evil, and you see where their allegiances go. You see that this is biblical. There's nothing changed. I want to rule the world. That's it. Everything we're going through now, Uni likes his movies. It's the Bond villain in the bottom of the volcano wanting to rule the world. He's going to blow it up if you don't let him. That's all this is.
Well, we know ourselves with, for example, a patent, when, talk about climate change and all this nonsense as a pretext for bringing this stuff in with the cars. Ultimately, hydrogen engines, water-based engines, discovered a long time ago, patents are out, but obviously they can't buy the person off, they kill them. It was that guy GC Math that you were talking about earlier, and with all the alternative and holistic health cures, they'll shut them down, imprison people, kill them, alternative doctors being killed. So the problem that you've got, if you get any prominence beyond a certain level, if you're a peasant who's on a little show like this with 50 people watching live or whatever, they just leave you alone until you get enough critical mass, then you become a threat. And then ultimately it gets much more dangerous. So they play the calculus differently. They know that until somebody becomes a real threat, they can just leave them. And they can exploit it as well. Look at David Icke. A lot of people think Icke's an operation. And if he is, right, I'm not saying he is, but if he is, him being there is very useful to them. So sometimes letting people tell some of the truth and people get on board, but then they get distracted. So a Russell Brand figure, I was talking to my friend Colin earlier, and he was saying, look how many times that Russell Brand has reinvented himself as somebody new, somebody different, following every trend. And every time he changes trend, all his followers follow him. So I think he's recently become a Christian, but he was into esoteric stuff before that, and he became a communist for a while and all this malarkey. So he's been
almost
through
like
all of it. So
it's almost like he's an actor.
Well, a lot of that does look that way. But I mean, we don't 100% know. And if we just say yes, then we can dismiss some important things. But coming back to hydrogen engines and other stuff and these solutions, when we find the optimal solution and we get close, so for example, somebody was winning this battle over council tax or gas and electric in a court that was going to win, and it was going to create a precedent, and the fossil fuel companies, it was the numbers up, that person would get disappeared. If it got to that point, the person would be disappeared. It's not allowed. Just like the banks were too big to fail, it ain't allowed. This is why it will ultimately have to be a people movement, because anytime anybody comes up with some solution that will benefit everybody and it's not in line with their agenda, that person will disappear. Yeah. If it's not supporting the narrative and the profits of these people, that person will disappear. That channel will get YouTube strikes. They'll get cancelled. We know this. So the question is, how do we get out of that trap? And there ain't a way. Once you become too big, you become a target. So what we have to do is kind of grow slowly together and fight small battles together and win small battles. Because like in international relations, if you've got a country, if it's attacked on 3 different sides, its military can't commit to all those 3 different sides of attack. It gets stretched. If it's also got internal problems, internal conflict, it's gonna be pulled apart internally and externally. And maybe one time we'll talk to my friend Roger, who's got his PhD in international relations. He's an expert on all this stuff, on military strategy and tactics. And ultimately, the way that these empires and big nations fall is because they get cocky. Roman Empire was saying, they extend too far, they expand too far. The agenda is to keep sucking up more material resources from others. They overstretch. It's happened. I mean, Hitler going into Russia. You go in at the wrong time of year and you get overconfident, a bit of bravado, bit of a scorched earth policy, and suddenly you're trapped in crap weather. You haven't got the logistics. You lose. You overstretch. So I think we have.
Khan, did it?
Well, exactly. But look at guerrilla warfare as well. The guerrilla warfare is proven. Look at Vietnam. America vastly outnumbered who it was attacking, but they lost, or they certainly failed to win. Put it that way.
No, hang on. They say it was a draw, mate. I'm sure they say it's a draw.
Yeah, well, they have to, don't they? They've got to say first. But ultimately, these sorts of strategies at a low level, small victories, individuals taking on corporates, maybe in small groups. I mean, maybe people need. Do you know what? I've just had an idea. Maybe it isn't about individuals or big collectives. Maybe what we need is little group cells of people, like forming units, like 10 people, creating support structures so that we can support each other in taking on corporates. Maybe that's the way to go. We need to find the middle way. Small units, obviously probably not family units, people properly bonded together. If a problem crops up, you've got 10 people, say, with different skill sets who can wade in and come together and share the load. Because at the moment, it's too much of a burden for an individual to fight all these battles. We need to find a structure that's hard for them to shut down, but where we get the support and guidance that we need to be able to take them on.
How about you look at it this way? When we're talking about empires overstretching, we know the Roman Empire was already falling apart from within. Most empires normally do crumble when they expire from within. How about if we don't have any countries, any kingdoms, but we have 10 kings and no kingdoms, and they operate from inside whilst paying for and causing these wars that dismantle Europe, and they build these people up, the likes of Hitler, the likes of Stalin, because without that money, there wouldn't have been the Bolshevik Revolution. We wouldn't have had Stalin. We wouldn't have, as Taylor commented, we wouldn't have had Stalin planning. Well, he starved 50 million people whilst doing it, but planning and building all these tanks and armory to invade Europe. So, Hitler had no choice but to overstretch. And you know what? He was really close to it. It was only because of what you touched on, Alex, is that winter time that
Yeah,
all of a sudden. But don't forget the supply lines that were backing them up. They were being destroyed as well. So these strategies are forced. I mean, if you take what happened in World War One, where we had these families, these bankers and everything who were inside our own country and our war military experts. I mean, what would Roger say about climbing out of a trench and walking with a stiff upper lip and make sure you walk and you don't run, you don't jump down, you just keep walking forward while they open a Gatling gun on you. You know, that's military expertise. These people got medals. And after that, Churchill then sends them up to Manchester to Peterloo, where they're all arguing about buying stuff in from outside, and everybody's starving in Manchester. All the workers, you know, we've got all these experts, and then you're sending military men who've got 1,000-yard stare, who's then ordered to open fire. They're not going to stop. They don't see people. They didn't see children. They just open fire. You know, that could have caused that could have set the country on fire. That.
yeah.
But Churchill's this military expert leader, isn't he? Isn't he the best prime minister we've ever had? These are the people who don't ask the questions. They don't care. I know my mum would have been all for Winnie. You know, it was all about the pride that they felt of coming together under all that. You know, under bomb shelters, my granddad walking about with a bin lid on his head. It was all part of the culture. But that was programmed to us. Those two wars were planned, and we weren't invited. We were thrown into it. When you've got 16-year-olds lying about their age to go to war, and then you've even said, I know you were being bringing an analogy about being wolves, but we've got in Australia children who are identifying as wolves in school and at home, and that's being facilitated. What are they going to do if their country's invaded? Bark at the moon? You know, there's no leaders, Alex. They've done a really good job. It's out of our hands. This we know this, Alex.
Yeah.
We've got to take part in it somehow. But it doesn't. People don't take part until the television goes off, until it knocks on their door, until they can't afford to keep paying their way anymore. You know, when you look back at what people used to be able to afford, I know people now who's, as a couple, they're earning more money than they've ever done, but they're no better off. They're worse off. So it comes to that point where something's got to give. You know, how many times do you keep trying to get blood out of this stone?
They're managing it craftily. I mean, you know yourself, we experienced a power cut for 9 hours a few days back. And if they do it craftily enough and suggest that we have to ration electricity because of climate change, if they blag enough people, so then you get a classic example of what you were saying. People's electric off for 9 or 10 hours is well beyond the pale. And about 5 years ago, people, even in this country, would have been virtually strung up for that. There'd been heavy compensation claims, whereas now it'll just, it's a fact of life. Well, yeah, your electric's going to be off. We have to ration. They do it in other countries for different reasons, but they'll be able to pull it off on the grounds of scarcity. And if enough people are bought into that, they won't kick off. They'll just sit there for 9 or 10 hours going, oh, well, it came back on again. That's all right. So this is how demoralized we are in our resistance. Very, very difficult because nobody knows how to break rank. But people need to kick off in a good way. Just protest. I don't mean protest like going out, but just basically contact somebody, make your voice heard. But if no one's doing it, it's like with masks. Everybody complied. So they just said, oh, brilliant. Well, we'll just do this now. Oh, everyone's going to comply. Oh, well, what if we try this now? How ridiculous can we make it? And everyone will comply. And then they'll go, brilliant. There's nothing they can do. So the only thing we can do, because we can't mobilise others.
They had people banging pots and pans at 8 o'clock every Thursday. Yeah.
Performing monkeys. And they were doing it with relish, extra tomato sauce, mate. So we have got to galvanise people to fight their own battles. It's good that some people are coming on and saying, I'm facing this challenge. But like I said, Paul, we have to find a middle way between imagining we're going to have a big horde of millions of people just going to turn up all of a sudden, because they're not, and not just leaving individuals to struggle on their own. We need to set up small support groups. That's what we need. And maybe maybe that is something. Maybe that's a project for us to get our teeth into. As I think about it, how can we set up small support networks of maybe up to 10 people with different skills? I think that might be what we need to do, with no pretense of changing the world, but simply making sure we're all okay, supporting each other, being in each other's corner.
Taylor's just said that climate change is dead. You want to tell that to the mayor of Manchester, who is now pushing those climate change things that we've had it on review, right? And as soon as Labour have got in, they took the fuel, the fuel off the elderly's been taken like that. Now Burnham is now reviewing, actually implementing this and charging people. I think it was something like each car owner, they'll be paying £410 before they've even drove, before they've even moved the car.
Yeah, now, that's what they want. Yeah,
are people really going to take that?
Yeah,
if they're going to say no, that's a bridge too far, then that could change things. But it's got to get to that fulcrum where at least there's an amount of people, because you only ever get just enough people to tip the scales, don't you? You don't get everybody doing everything. That's why it's so amazing that everybody is believing of what this system is, because this system's worldwide. It's nothing new. The Babylon system is nothing new. And we're now seeing the fall of it. Babylon is fallen, but what are they going to give us in between? What can we do? We've still got people who can engineer, who are creative, but that's been taken away from the people. We've gone people coming in now. They used to come here to learn that and take it back to their own country. Now they've got to come and teach us because they're so much further on, because we didn't bother investing in our own people. We are a consumer society, because as long as they've got the monkeys to go and perform in the circus, to dig the roads, to make the lights work, to drive the deliveries, all that kind of stuff, they don't care. And as long as we throw them a few peanuts, they won't care that they're paying taxes that they shouldn't be paying. They won't care that they're paying for the bills 3 times over. At some point, maybe you'll order something off Amazon online, and then when you turn up, you'll pay them cash after you paid them online, because that'll become normal soon. I think we've found a system and customers that just work perfect together. They don't ask questions, and they do as they're told. And it's when those people start asking questions, all of a sudden, when you ask that first question, that changes your actions. But it's until you get to that first question. I've seen it in family and friends. They were all double jabbed, and because they've had that realization that they weren't well, that they've seen that they were scammed, they won't have any more. But what about when you can't leave your house again? It's you've just got to hope that there's something left in humanity, that they haven't just given up hope on everything. Because if you can see what this world is, you've got to know there's an opposite, and it's only going looking for the opposite that you'll find any hope in this world. Because there's nothing in this world, mate.
I think we've got to have strategies. So, like, for example, another strategy I come out with, even if we had groups of 10 in sort of some support group, the other thing people will benefit from doing is doing a full audit of their own life. Like, so, for example, like when you have to defrag your hard drive on your computer, or you've got too many programs open in background, and it gets clogged up with all these background programs, too much stuff going on. And I think that in our own lives, there's a parallel there to it, defragging your hard drive, streamlining your life, getting your priorities and your values absolutely straight. Because if you know what you value and what you prioritize, you know what you don't value as much and what you don't want to prioritize. Because it seems to me that we're so confused, like headless chickens with so many things going on. We're trying to put out fires, crises, this kind of thing. They're hitting us with one thing after another, and it's deranging our attention. If you come back to your centre and you focus on your priorities and you streamline your life and you make it more efficient, you're going to be doing a better job at giving your attention to the things that are actually a priority. So this is a problem. If we don't know what our priorities are, we will be headless chickens. So I think we need to do a lot of work on streamlining our lives, getting clear on what we need, what we don't need, and just operate from that foundation, travel light, then come together with others who are traveling light so that you can get that support that you need when you need it, and be in small groups of support structures. I don't see another way to tackle it because it's too big to deal with at scale, because we're just individuals who don't have that sort of reach. And we don't want to get into a council of despair where we feel we can't do anything. And neither do we want to wait for some, like you say, some external rescuer. So the dilemma we've got is, well, what do we do in the meantime? Like we often talk about eschatology and God and Christ and the kingdom. Well, it's all right saying he's coming back. Even that's an external rescuer, which we know from a Christian point of view is coming. But does that mean in the meantime we just sit on our hands and do nothing because the rescue is coming for another 20 years? So we've all got to ask the question, even if we've got faith, what do I want to do with the energy I've got now and the resource I've got now to try and change it? And that's down to us.
It's funny.
GP. You don't go to your GP and say, make me well. Well, if you do, you're going to get all kinds of medical solutions that are going to line someone's pocket. If you don't take responsibility for your own health, the GP is irrelevant. Same issue.
It's funny that you mentioned that, though, that, people say that Christ is coming back, which he is, but you said we're looking at another external saviour. Well, when he comes back, he's not coming back to say, the time's now. The time's now is to see all this crap that's going on. Notice there's a definite aim at Jesus Christ and that Bible, because that's the only one that's mocked, the only God that's said that everybody can get to, and it doesn't matter which way you get. Yet then when you read his own book, it says, I'm the way, the truth, the life. And I'll say he's a liar. So the thing is, it's an internal saviour. It's within you to be saved. But people then take that esoterically as a Kundalini type, raising the vibration stuff, which I could see the plausibility of it 10 years ago. I could see the plausibility of it when I was doing mediumship 15, 20 years ago. I could see that plausibility. But I weigh up information, Alex, and the amount of information that I read in the book that I'd never read completely showed all this to be what it was, which was full of lies, full of shite, full of crap, where you're not meant to be idolatrous, but you're told to worship other people other than Jesus. And he says he's the only way. So intellectually, I understood that to be unique. But the price for me was to believe. He's paid the price for me, but you have to believe. Well, I didn't know how to believe. Didn't know how to believe till I did. And that's why I can never prove what I know. But I can't say I believe it, because I just know it's different. I just knew it. As soon as it hit me, everything changed for me. Everything flipped over in life. But all I can do is point to the evil that's in this world, because I can prove it to people. But they don't want to look at this. So how do you end up going from, if you don't want to save your money on your gas bill, how do you end up going to eternal salvation? How do we fit that into a conversation? You sat on a bus or in a pub, you were just speaking to a bloke for 10 minutes. That's a vast subject to cram into 10 minutes. I've tried.
Well, it is a problem, like I've said before many times, Paul, right? That all claims that any human makes are just claims. I could claim anything. I could claim I'm a teapot, and it's like, well, how are you going to prove? Some claims are not easy to prove. Some are easier than others. But at the end of the day, a claim is just a claim. It's the same for Christians. It don't matter what they claim. The reality is, how are you living your life? It applies, because Jesus Christ, ultimately, from a Christian point of view, he said we're the light of the world. So if we're not fulfilling that, it doesn't matter what the mess. If a Christian says, yeah, get saved, but they've got no light in them, who's going to listen to them? So again, when we're on a podcast, we're not doing charity or whatever, or say looking after people and protecting them and demonstrating the love of Christ. We're having an intellectual conversation about the state of the world. That's valid. But we need to go much deeper, because the human condition is about how connected people are to other people. Even the kingdom of God, it's not just a humanitarian, happy clappy kumbaya thing, but it is a people thing. The divine perspective is like God's people together, right? But not dealing with corruption, not dealing with this rebellion, this opposition of everything that's good, which is the satanic role. We want things that are life-giving, not a death cult. Not let's destroy everything. Let's get rid of carbon, zero carbon. I mean, that's pretty clear. These Satanists are exactly that. They're anti-life, they're anti-God, they're anti-human. They want us to be transhuman. So there is something behind all of this agenda, that is profoundly evil. And people speculate all they want what the solution is. We think we've got the right solution in Jesus Christ. I believe that. But other people who don't already see that, they're probably not. They're not going to accept that because it's a claim. But they can probably look at life and realize that there's a definite finger of evil going on behind this that doesn't have a human face. Or if it has a human face, it's a human face mask on a beast. And the problem is we've got to rip the heart out of the evil in people. And that starts with us, because we're people. So first and foremost, we've got to not be like that. We've got to be different. And if we're not, we're just like everybody else, and we're not going to change anything. So, it's the MOD. Right. Dorian, you don't mean the Ministry of Defence, do you?
I don't know if he means the mod, as in Taylor, or the Ministry of Defence there.
Tavistock is mod-led.
I would say it's Ministry of Defence.
Right.
Remember that used to be the Ministry of War, didn't it? And
yeah, it was probably more accurate description.
They thought it sounded too aggressive.
Yeah.
But the Tavistock has done a great job, along with Ed Bernays and all that kind of propaganda stuff. You saw how much the propaganda worked with the Germans. But you remember, you're bringing people out of abject poverty to where they've got a 3-bed semi-detached with a family car, and they can go on package holidays after living in the streets with nothing. You don't. It's not a mastermind to say, well, I'll take a few hits. Oh, I've got to be in by 8 o'clock, sir. Oh, that's fine. As long as you've got your papers, you can stay out till 10. They're willing to take that. That is where you get the old saying about if you've got nothing to hide. My mum taught me if you've not done anything wrong, you should be able to tell a policeman who you are and where you live. And my dad was always the one that said, ask them why they want to know where you live. Ask them what you've done. If you've done it, if you've committed a crime, give your name.
Yeah.
If you can get away with it, and I find out, it was how he was taught to speak to police, but he was always taught to respect them. I remember hearing somebody call him a pig once, and I said it must have been about 9 or 10. My dad gave me a proper bollocking for it. He said they're ordinary people, Paul, doing a job. And back then, most of them, the police that I knew, obviously, the ones that were bad ones, proper knobheads, you knew them by name. But most of the other coppers weren't like that. They'd pull you over and they'd talk to you and not give you points. They'd give you a lesson, if anything. But that's certainly changed. I've seen that change a lot over the years. But they don't like it now because they're being taught to enforce commercial laws on drivers that don't specifically apply. People have learned that, so now it's causing the friction on the roadside. And then once you've got the friction on the roadside, it's only going one way, isn't it?
Well, yeah, most people live in a consensus reality, and quite apart from any functions of society that exist in the institutions, it always presents on the level of the phenomena. So it really is that you've got a lot more freedom than you think. If you don't question conventions and consensus, you'll just replicate it. It's like insurance. You used to need a signature, didn't you, for that type of contractual understanding? And in theory now, how many people sign? Because let's just say they got a fancy car that's a mark £70,000, and on the insurance, and in theory they should have a wetting signature, but they don't sign. So virtually everyone on the road is driving illegally who's not signed the document. But they're not gonna, like an insurance company is not gonna say, oh well, technically there's no signature on this £70,000 car insurance, so it's a right. They're not gonna actually refuse to pay out because it would create
commercially, that car's been registered as a possible commercial vehicle, so there could be potential numerous drivers driving that car. So it's got to be classed like that. That's what I'm saying. People have got things in life, they've registered things, and they don't know the ramifications of what that means is when you register. And all I can see is that it is actually meant to be beneficial. You register it to your trust, what your credit comes from. You register it to that. And the government, believe it or not, are meant to look after that for you. And they do a really good job of it. But they've also taught you to never act as that creditor, so they can pretend that you're still not come back to take control of your own credit account. And because you don't perform your own actions, they look after it for you. So when there is a penalty notice given against your trust, and they ask, are you Mr. David Smith? And you go, yes, then they're going to punish you to compensate the registry, the credit account. Now, does our credit account from the joint gyros that aren't used, does it go back to our credit account, or is it siphoned off to an abandoned funds account every time so it can be claimed by anybody who wants it later, just like lost property at a train station? Tend to lean towards that myself.
Yeah, exactly. So have we got, I mean, obviously, it'd be nice if we had some new faces, and I need to clear off in about half an hour. So if anyone, are you up for opening it up? And I think what we need to do is just make sure that we stipulate that we get a new voice on.
Anybody got something to say? How long do you want to give him?
Emphasis on a new voice. I mean, that's where we have to. Yeah. And look, here's your chance.
You know, Taylor filters things out, don't you?
Well, you know, people have got the chance now to share something. If we're all going to step up and act against corporates with knowledge, that's one thing. That's quite hard. It's quite time consuming. It takes a lot of effort, as we know, Paul. It doesn't take that much effort to show up on here, follow a link, and tell us your perspective on things. So,
yeah, I mean, I like to hear other people's perspectives because you definitely don't want to end up in an echo chamber of your own, because that can be, that can send people mad. But I have people around me that show me normal people every day, and the normal things that I used to be bothered about, all the normal distractions, it still goes on, and I think I couldn't participate in that, not because I don't like doing stuff like that, but I see what's coming, and it's like watching that freight train. You've seen somebody on the train tracks, and you've shouted at them and everything, and they just stood. What are you saying? Come here! No, what are you saying? Just come here! You can't get them to think until something rocks their world, and that's the only time I've ever seen anybody change, Alex. Once their world gets rocked, once they're being told that this is going to happen to them unless they do this, nothing seems to change. Young Jason.
Young Jason, I'm same age as you. I'm not that young.
How you doing, pal?
Yeah, not too bad. And we just got. I'll let me take. I've got YouTube on at the same time as StreamYard, so it's doubling up. Yeah, all good, chaps. I just wondered if you'd had a look at you'd had a chance to look at that Cliff High stuff that I mentioned.
I had a quick look at it. Just remind for if there's any new listeners, Jason, what the basics of him is.
Well, he's comes from a different direction with regards to religion, and the sort of elevator pitch is he believes that there was no such thing as God. There were gods, and they were called the Elohim, and that let's just say a certain religious group with small caps were there's a group within the small cap group that are satanic, that have a satanic religion rather than a normal religion, rather than a normal religion. And he's just done he's got it. So it's Cliff High. If you go on his Substack, Cliff High Substack, he's just done one that's called Idiots. And he talks about the word idiots comes from the Greek, and he explains all that. But he also talks about this that he describes as the Elohim worship cult. And it's so because he's even saying that the Christian religion is another, whilst Jesus might have been a good, say, prophet, was it? I mean, and even because I've sort of thought about it, and he says, like God, like Jesus, did he? Because I don't know. I haven't drilled down into it enough to be. I'm looking from the sort of 10,000 foot view. I mean, if Jesus is said he's the Son of God rather than God, then he is factually correct in that respect, because I suppose we're all, if God created us, we're all essentially sons or children of God, aren't we? I suppose it depends how you look at it. And the thing I think with religion is it's all open to interpretation and misinterpretation. So you may well be right in some respects, because if you think all these different religions, it's like, oh no, my religion's right and everyone else's is wrong. Is it religion, or is it interpretation? Is it interpretation of God, or is it?
Well, the sons of God, the fallen angels were the sons of God. Those sons of God were worshipped as gods. The Canaanites worshipped Hillel ben Shakar. Shakar was one of the morning stars that fell. So it tells you all about all this. Christ said that he was God, and he also said he was the Son, because me and Alex believe in the Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit make up the one God. It's not three different gods. And Yahweh is the Elohim unique. He's above all the other Elohim, because Elohim can be singular and it can be plural as well. So he's along the right lines. And those religions that you're talking about, Jason, from, in my opinion, not only the Jews, but Catholicism, sects of Christianity, JWs, Mormons, these are all skewed off what the actual doctrine of Christ actually says. if I would like to think that he's read the Bible and at least tried to compare it. But we've got all these copies, and we've got this one original, and all these copies say that that's wrong. And then, people say, well, the Bible's not original. It's corrupted. It's this, that, and the other. You can't keep having all these arguments when we've got Hindus who've got thousands of gods. These are all gods. These are all little Elohims, the little G gods, what we all think of. But there's that one story that stands out. And now we've got the Catholics who say, I don't know if you saw the show last week, we're talking about it, where the Pope has now said that all religions lead to God. Well, he's now going completely against the book he's meant to be valid in. I can see somebody's Well, I can see Taylor in the green room. I wonder what we're flashing at the bottom of the screen. I can just see his head moving. But yeah, it's interesting because I've done, Jason. Didn't know it is work, but I've done all those that research onto all these other religions. I mean, I was inducted into Taoism myself because I was looking for these. But then when you realise it's ancestral worship, well, you're worshipping dead people. The only religion that doesn't worship dead people is, I would say, Christianity is following what Jesus said, following his doctrine. But people will say, "Oh, are you Catholic?" Well, I don't particularly see Catholics as Christian if they're not following what it actually says in the Bible. And it was very unique, and it's a very small path to walk, Jason, because you have to stop doing certain things that you love doing in this world because it's not conducive. It's not that you can't do it; it's just not conducive to your eternity. And people can say, "Well, it's just a story." Well, it's a story that resonated with me and changed my life enough. I mean, I find it wonderful that you're walking down a path looking. I told a story last week of a girl who'd been in, was a Reiki master, been involved in New Age for 8 years, and all of a sudden she's found Jesus and it's changed her life. It's honestly, it's strange how many people are looking. They're at least looking. It's not for me to say, you've got to believe this. It doesn't matter to me. But if I don't tell you to go and read it because you say, I'm not bothered about reading it, then I'm going to say, well, you should read it. And I'll show you why. I'll show you my comparisons. I've come from where you come from. I just got to this stage after losing everything and finding out there's nothing in this world. There's nothing. Once I realised there was nothing in this world, then I could see something different. But it's when we're trying to fix everything in this world, and we've got so much mixture. The Jews that you were talking about, they have what people think is the Star of David. Well, that's the Star of Remphan. Remphan is Rephaim. This is Nephilim. This is fallen Elohim bloodlines that you're talking about. You know, if you go to Talmudic Jews, they believe that Mary was a prostitute and Christ is burning in hell and with semen and crap around him. That's what those type of Jews think. But you've also got the Messianic Jews that see things. I mean, these Jews, there's Isaiah 53, isn't it, Alex? The Jews aren't taught Isaiah 53 because it tells you who the Messiah is. And if it doesn't fit Jesus, I don't know who it could fit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's about weighing that information up, Jason. You've just got to keep doing it, mate. I mean,
I think
you're looking at 1,000 yards. At least you're looking more. At least you're looking.
I think we've got to paint a bigger picture just in terms of Elohim, because what you were saying, Jason. So, like in the book of Exodus, I mean, you get Elohim mentioned in the first 5 books of the Pentateuch: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But Elohim was a generic sense of God. It was a regional concept of deity. It came from El, and you get obviously Elohim. And from Elohim in the Exodus account, you then move to Yahweh. Now, any God, so you just move to philosophy and like philosophical theology. Any God that's worth any weight for any human must be a God who intervenes in the world. Otherwise, it's irrelevant. I've said this many times. It's like, imagine you had a girlfriend in Australia and you know, you had a Zoom conversation with her once a year, and you said to people, yeah, I've got a girlfriend in Australia. All right, yeah, tell me about her. Well, I talk to her once a year on Zoom. Oh, so she's a girlfriend in name only? Yeah. She's not really relevant. So any God who actually exists has to be relevant. And if you think about, imagine God, the arrogance of humans to think, oh, well, unless God shows up, I won't believe anything that gets said to me. Wow, imagine God showing up. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, wow, if God showed up here now, I'd be in trouble. So this Elohim notion, it was a generic concept that all the regional, basically all the people in the cultures who were surrounding that area believed in El as a kind of an Elohim supreme kind of deity. But when Yahweh turned up, that was a difference, because prior to that, when Moses was going to, help the people be liberated by the power of God, he said to God, well, who should I say has sent me to you? And he said, you'll say that I am sent me to you. I am that I am. In other words, there was a shift, not just the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Elohim, the God of your traditions, the God of everyone's local traditions. This is Yahweh. This is the actual God who is going to intervene, and he is going to set you free from Pharaoh, the secular oppressor. In other words, he's a God who acts in history. The difference is with Elohim, he's just a generic deity that everyone worships, but he's irrelevant. He's just an Elohim concept. Suddenly God is saying, no, I actually exist. I exist. But the problem is, it's like the girlfriend in Australia. She might exist, but if you're not in a relationship with her, she might as well not exist. So God, Yahweh, at first did not deliver the people as I am. He didn't basically liberate the people as I am. So you move from Elohim to I am. So I'm not just the God of history and myth. I'm an actually existing God. But the actually existing God doesn't liberate the people. It's Yahweh. Yahweh is the center of Jewish religion. Now, lots of people say he's a Gnostic demiurge creator called Yaldabaoth. Garbage. Sorry. But that's what does the rounds for people, to try and explain the difference between the Old Testament God, who seems to be vengeful, and the New Testament message of the God of love in Jesus. And people can't get their heads around the tension between those two. So they just go, oh, well, clearly Yahweh wasn't the real God, and Jesus represents him because he's love. He's God 2.0. Get rid of this Old Testament God. It's just nonsense apologetics that people who haven't done any study and research, they just invent these fictions and become Gnostics and stuff. But the reality is, if you look at the progression, you move from Elohim to I am, I actually exist, to Yahweh, I intervene in history and I change things. So the reason I'm going on this circuitous path is to say, any God you believe in, or any claim that you make, if it isn't backed up by this God intervening in history, it's not God. Because nobody needs a God who I am, I exist, I'm all powerful, but I don't show me power, I don't do anything, I just sit up in heaven and do nothing. Well, that's not going to cut it. And I wouldn't expect any human to say, yeah, well done, God. Thank you. Thanks for existing up there. Thanks for making all those claims about being God, but you never intervene in human affairs. It's not going to cut it. So the reality is, any God who exists and worth the salt has got to be a God who intervenes and makes a difference. And that's the starting point, basically.
I do feel like I'm in a Jehovah's Witness meeting here.
How dare you?
No,
How dare you?
No.
How dare you? How very dare you?
But the point about that is, if you're gonna make claims, right, about scripture, you can have general philosophical ideas, and that's good. But at some point, you probably commit to a tradition. You can use logic and reasoning. So Jesus was described as logos, right? The word of God made flesh. God's logic. So even if you're in a different tradition, that tradition will make a case. So come and make the case. Use those scriptures to back it up, and then, argue with other people who use their scriptures or their logic or their philosophy, and everyone can have a good, fantastic discussion about it all. Because I think that's what it's all about. If you just make a claim and hide behind it, so what?
Anyway, because the other thing he made, if you get a chance, listen to the Substack that he does called Idiots. I think it's he's just done another one. I haven't looked at it yet, but it's about an hour and odd long. But the last one I watched was this one called Idiots, and I did mention it last time I was on. That was there's over 1,000 Bibles, and he quotes that there's over 1,200 Bibles, and he also quotes that the story of Moses was put into the Bible, and the timeline doesn't match. He says it didn't happen. Those stories have been put in there to push a narrative, and those stories happened long before the Bible had been written. But I'd just like to get your take on it. I'd like you to watch it just to see, you might be able to pick holes in it more than I can, because you might have you've definitely got more knowledge with regards to the Bible.
The transcripts that the Bible's compiled with, because don't forget, these were never in verses and chapters. They were just scripts. They were all in different things. I mean, we can look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. We can see how old the Bible writings are, and they're written in all different languages. 11,000 or so many thousands of documents written in different languages, and they all tell the same story. It's when they say that there's all these Bibles, there are. That's right. I wanted to know what the best Bible was for me. I love the older world English, King James, using the lexicon with Strong's Concordance, the blue letter. I could check the Greek and I could check what the Hebrew meanings were. So if it didn't fit right, I would know. If I go to the NIV, there's thousands of words been taken out of the NIV. Some all verses are missing and put as footnotes. So I know the Bibles have been corrupted, but because I need to do my due diligence, I had to find the best I could possibly find. So I will have a look at it because I want to see what he's saying, what the Dead Sea Scrolls are, because we're going back well before Jesus, talking about Jesus. Just because the Bible wasn't compiled, it doesn't mean these documents weren't there. Because, like I said, the book was put together, but all the scriptures were divinely written. All the rest of the Bibles aren't. They're just interpretations, translations. So I'll definitely take a look at that, Jason.
Mm.
So, Richard, have you anything to say now you've come on? I'll give you a shot first because if he starts, we won't shut him up.
Yeah, well.
He's concentrating. He must be arguing with somebody in the chat room.
No, I'm not even in the chat right now. I'm just letting you guys go because I don't want to interrupt your conversation.
Nice one. Go on, Rich. Have you got something? Are you saying something?
Just something on what you've just been talking about, because I started watching a bit earlier, and I was just picking points and things that I might be able to have a word on. You've been on about Jesus and stuff just then. Our Cakes, he breaks down the Bible and stuff. I'm not saying what he says is true. I don't know if the Bible says or anything that's written down. I don't know it's true. It's come from another person that could have been making things up at the time, and obviously the other people have different stories about different timelines and stuff. He's a chronologist, so he goes back to when things first started being written, or when he thinks that things start being written. Yeah, I'm supposed to be going on his channel in November. So, yeah, a couple of months I should be doing a live with him. And Martin Leakey as well, I think he's coming on. But yeah, he does a lot of breakdowns, stuff to do with the Bible. I've listened to some of his stuff. It's whatever for me. For me, I don't know if any history is real, if anything that has been said over time is any real, because Martin's into all mud floods and stuff, and yeah, it does look like there is evidence that there was mud floods, and because obviously buildings are, like there's more stuff below ground or below the level, and then what is it? Is it Easter Island or something where it's got them massive statues, and they're all. I've got the head sticking out, but then there's like 30 foot's worth of stone underneath. But it is what it is. I don't know, and I don't. Jason Bashir says it's simulation, and that the Phoenix comes around every 138 years and basically cleanses the earth, and then it all gets started, and it's back to Genesis. Because obviously it looks like we are living through the times of Revelations, and all these things biblically and astrologically are coming around. And yeah, so I don't know. He says 2040 it's going to be another Phoenix event. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but he spent thousands and thousands of hours doing what he does. There was a point earlier. I think Alex saying something about council tax, if they're going to take that 25% single person discount. I used to have the 25% single person discount, and I've just got rid of it. Just cancel the direct debit. I'm not going to talk to them. And now every letter that they send through, I'm going to try and use that as my evidence for fraud. Demanding monies off me for no contract. Yeah, you say it doesn't stand up, but whatever. a way that Simon Muller, I think you've got him on your Facebook. He basically helps people stopping council tax through their own legislation, saying if your dwelling or house or whatever is a place of worship, then you don't have to pay any council tax. He does it for people. He put a post on a couple of months ago saying that's another 12 people or something that are not paying council tax. So he helps people doing that type of thing. It's always an option. You basically just have to turn one room in your house into what looks like a place of worship. So you fill the room with seats and you put whatever thing you want on the wall, religious wise or whatever, and then basically dress that room up to look like people come round and worship in there. It says all the vast majority of the time, like 90% of the time, the council don't even say anything about it. They just basically say, yeah, all right, it's a place of worship, and let you crack on with it. So they might not even ever. He says when he did it like 20 years ago or something, and he says he's never had a visit off anyone from council to see if it's a place of worship. But he says he still keeps that room the same in case they ever do, and then he can just be like, "Yep, it's there. There you go." Yeah, that's a way around that. I think I mentioned it last week. Brandon Joe Williams with all the car finance documents, where he's writing without recourse, paid to the order of, and then the fictitious entity, the all caps name, and then by, and then sign, and then name hyphen surname colon, I think, and then agent at the end. However he gets them to fill it in. But yeah, every day he's getting people posting on his Facebook saying that they're doing this process, and I don't think they're really getting any kickback from it, because he's posting if people are getting kickback, and there's people every day that are posting they've just got a $50,000 car or whatever, and it just seems like that we're missing something there. I found something out today that you can get loans based on your life insurance policies, and you don't have to be dead to be able to leverage it. So he's basically set up it has to be a certain type. It can't be a term life insurance. It has to be the whole life insurance policy. You pay between £20 and £50 a month, and then you can leverage off the up to 90% of the value of the payout for the life insurance. You can leverage that and get that money and get it to yourself. And then just lastly, a little point that I made. So apparently there's a second moon in the sky. They've identified some sort of asteroid thing, and they're telling us now that there's a second moon in the sky, and it's going to be with us for the next 2 months or something. But yeah, most people know that that's a load of bull, and the stuff that they said that the James Webb Telescope. They said when this asteroid comes into orbit, they managed to pick up what was behind it, and it said that there was life forms behind this asteroid or whatever. But yeah, James Webb Telescope was a load of bull. They basically just using that as a holographic projector. It's the highest up and the most expensive holographic projector that they've sent up, in my opinion, and what I've looked at regarding that. But yeah, I'll chill out now.
All right, man, interesting stuff. Go on, Taylor. You're reporting for America here, remember?
That's true. Well, I will say that the last few days have been kind of anticlimactic, to say the least. Nothing really all that big really happening over here, except just the usual hubbub about leading up to the election. That's in just over a month now, actually.
Pretty bad tornado and hurricane happening though, isn't there?
Oh yeah. To be fair, It's
Entire town's wiped out. Entire town's gone. Is that not big enough for you?
well, I'm talking about political, economic wise, and all that. But yeah, you are right about that. It's pretty bad. I don't understand how people can even live down in those areas of the country where there's constant weather problems and storms and such. Because it's just I don't know. I just don't feel like it'd be worth living in a place where your town is constantly destroyed and you have to rebuild all the time. It doesn't seem very fun. Maybe that's just me.
You're not going to get much out of insurance down in there, then, are you?
Something like that. It's
where we live, right? Mainly where I come from. When it gets windy and wet, you put your big coat on. That's as bad as it really gets. We don't have severe weather like that. Very rare occasions, but when you go in looking at Tornado Alley and stuff like that, I agree. I don't know. The fact that it's called Tornado Alley. I'll buy a house there. It must be great to live there.
Exactly, man. That's what I've been saying. Why do people live in Tornado Alley, man? It's just your house is gonna get destroyed. Your possessions are gonna get lost. You're gonna have to flee. You're gonna have to find a new place to live.
Hang on a minute. That just sounds like everywhere in the world right now.
Well, yeah. Well, to a lesser degree, but this is to a much more physical and higher degree.
So, are you telling us that you've come on as our American, not just political correspondent? Remember, you're meant to be telling us about what's happening over there. But that's as much as you've got because Alex has got to go soon. So is that as much as your input? Nothing big's really happened.
Well, over here in the U.S., things are kind of they're kind of on the slower end at the moment. But I mean that's to be expected. After the quote unquote assassination attempt a couple weeks ago, usually when things big like that happen, they have a bit of a slowdown so people can take it in a bit more before they start unloading even more stuff upon us. However, I will say that I did actually just learn about a new interesting American family that has been a very influential one throughout the mainstream media for the last 100 or so years, called the Newhouse family. Who actually bought Reddit way back in 2006. They're the same ones they're just below the Sulzberger family in terms of influence. They're from the usual suspects, the Bolshevik type people. They have New York Times cover boys. They control several dozen newspapers and big news channels and such. I'll give an example of something that they're responsible for. Do you know David Duke?
Yes.
So David Duke, at one point he recalled as a teenager that he was confused about the gradual leftward turn and subtle anti-race baiting of the formerly conservative New Orleans Picayune. I can't even pronounce the name. This is in Louisiana. It's Louisiana's largest newspaper, which it started gradually going leftward, but then it turns out, this family is actually the one that bought it, and they started, and ever since they did, it started turning into a Marxist paper. Pushing the same old stuff. Like I'll give you some examples. The Times, Star Ledger from New Jersey, Oregon Live, the Oregonian from Portland, Oregon, the Plain Dealer from Cleveland, Ohio, the New Jersey Journal, the ANN Arbor News, etc. And it just goes on and on and on and on.
No. Well, before we wrap up, Taylor, there's one question that you've not touched on. You're going to have to tell us.
Okay.
Did Diddy bum Bieber?
What?
Did Diddy bum Bieber?
Did Diddy bum what?
You missed it. What the P Diddy stuff, mate?
Oh yeah, I know the P Diddy stuff.
He's American. He won't understand any of that.
He didn't get bum. He didn't get bumming him.
Yeah, about the P Diddy stuff. I'm not sure if you wanted me to talk about that because that gets into a bit of a lengthy conversation.
It is a bit now. It was meant to be a joke, but never mind.
Okay, yeah, because I already know about all that. Like I said, I just didn't want to bring it up because that's a whole
Well,
rabbit
you're
hole right there.
Well, you're the American correspondent, mate, so you would have had more time, but we've got to wrap up early tonight, lads. So thanks for coming on, Jason. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
By the way, just give me that fella's name again. I'm going to put him in YouTube now.
He won't be on YouTube. He gets. You mean Cliff High? No, you
Yeah,
need to look.
Cliff
In fact,
High, is it?
hang on a minute. Let me see if I can post it in the chat with these.
You won't be able to, mate.
Yeah, you can't.
me
You need a spanner.
Oh right, okay. Hang on. Let me just. Can I put it in the private chat or not?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you can put it in there, I should think.
Yeah. I mean, you put it there. I'll post it in the public chat for you.
Is he Cliff High EPSW?
No, I don't think so. Let me just put this.
Right,
there you go. So that's his Substack link, but he's got lots of he puts like 10-minute reads in there, and then he also does videos. He's on sometimes on Rumble, and he's on other people post his stuff on YouTube, but he was banned years ago. But
I'll give him a look up once we're off air, mate.
But the idiot, just look at the second from the latest one called Idiots. That's the one he talks about the Bible, and I'd just be interested to get, you and Alex, just get your take on it, how he sees religion, and that it's. I've noticed a few comments in the what is it saying? It like religion's a psyop, and it is a bit of a. We're living in times of massive deceit, and like realizing your gas is free is the tip of the iceberg. The amount of deceit that's going on. I mean the P Diddy stuff, the Epstein stuff, it's how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go and look at this stuff. This is why it's like, I think when we do finally, if we ever do find out the truth, we'll just you'll think, my God, I knew they were lying, but I didn't know how much they were lying. So it's just going to be a massive awakening for everybody.
I think it's going to be a terrible awakening for some people.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
Oh, I'll say this: that P Diddy right now, he's just he's being used as the opening can, and by that I mean he's being used as the gateway to go into all these other celebrities like Jay-Z, Lady Gaga, LeBron James, all these other people who were all friends with Jeffrey Epstein on his island, and who have done all the child sex trafficking crap.
When will it be Oprah's turn, Taylor?
Yeah, Lady Oprah. She's gone. Yeah, she's gone.
Well, Diddy didn't kill himself, did he? Diddy didn't kill himself. So,
I've heard Hillary Clinton's his next new prison officer.
Unless.
Oh yeah, Clinton. Oh yeah, that's right. She's
what if Diddy's not the real Diddy? What if Diddy's wearing a Diddy mask?
Yeah, it's not the real Diddy. He's dead.
See, everything's wrong. Everything's wrong.
Look, I'm not the real Alex. I'm dead.
we're not really here, Taylor. We're a figment of your imagination.
Okay, well, let me clarify. Either dead or in Guantanamo Bay. Well, we'll put it there. There are certain people you can definitively say are definitely dead just because of all the comms you get, and then there is like a whole bunch where you can they say either they're under submission, they're in Guantanamo Bay, or they're dead. It's either way. The point is that these people are done. And I will say also about this about P Diddy is that he was one of the big starts to this gangster rap genre that's put the black community into this mental state of thinking that the ghetto is a great place to be and that they should be respected for it. And it teaches them not to leave that the slum type of life. And that's what these people are there to do. And now, thankfully, they're being exposed. as publicly exposed as the frauds and disgusting people they are. Also, another thing about the P. Diddy stuff, and that's also going to be the gateway for getting rid of all these other big names, is that this gets into the pop culture side of things, which is very important. In my opinion, it's just as important as the politics type angle, because you can get rid of as many politicians and corrupt institutions as you want, but the majority of people my age and younger don't care about politics or economics. But once you get into the Hollywood people and the pop culture, like the media, the album artists, that's when people start caring, because then it's their big idols, their big singers, etc. And so this is going to be a big step going forward. That is just as important as the political stuff.
Go on, Alex.
Yo,
Have you got anything to add to what Taylor's just said?
no, not at the moment. I've just posted something in chat, which
What does that
just
mean?
a link to that. Kaza said there's a particular version of the Bible, so I've just posted the link.
You kind of posted the full link.
Oh, it says it's failed to post. Oh well.
Yeah. Do you know why? You've not got a spanner, mate.
You need a spanner to post it.
I'm spannerless.
You're
Put
spannerless.
it in the private chat, and I'll post it in the public chat for you.
Taylor's more power. Taylor's more power on this show than you have, mate. I'll have to
Yeah,
rectify that.
he's the overlord. He's the overlord.
Hey, I'm here to help. That's all there is to it. I'm just here to help. And Jason, I put your link in the chat as well.
Yeah, I've seen it. Cheers.
Right, guys. Thanks for coming on, Jason, Rich,
Pleasure.
Taylor. I'll see you next week, hopefully. God
Oh
willing.
my God, that link
Yeah,
is way
brilliant.
too long. It's not going to fit, bro. Holy crap. There's a
There you
character
go.
limit.
Oh well. I tried.
Can only try, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Cheers, Taylor. I'll speak to you through the week, mate. All right.
Yeah. Can I ask you one question, though? It's a quick question. It's a quick question.
It never is. It never is, mate.
I just wanted to ask, just like I asked you in the DM, in the email, did you want to do a show together?
I've said I'll speak to you through the week.
Okay.
All right, mate. See you soon, lad.
Yep.
God bless.
God bless.
So, another show done and dusted. I thought there was a lot of really interesting information in that one.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
How many are still on, Paul?
35.
It's not too bad, is it?
And
Yeah.
like we said, you're going up and down, but people pick and choose what they like to listen to. Some people listen to a bit, go away, and come back later. It is what it is, isn't it? It's one of those things.
It's hard to cover all the bases, Paul. Like, a movie, like I said earlier.
And to not repeat yourself, not to keep repeating yourself either. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy to, because it's very easy to fall back into talking about everything that we always know about.
We need strategies, basically. At the end of the day, no matter what we talk about, Paul, we've got to come out with concrete strategies that we can implement. Take stuff away and begin the process ourselves of challenging stuff with the knowledge that we've acquired. It's not a very glamorous solution. I mean, everyone wants the fireworks solution, but it's not going to come like that. It's going to be hard work, real persistence.
Well, they want that. What button do I press? Make it all go away. That's for this world. That's gone. They're switched on now. They're going for it. They're printing money like mad. They're leaving all the people with all the debt. And until that debt bites and it starts to affect people's lives, which it is, because, like I said, I know people who were working 2 jobs apiece, a couple, 2 jobs each, and they're doing worse off than people were doing 30 years ago with just 1 job in the family, and it weren't that great. Then it was on the decline. But they've really gone for it this time, Alex. There's no stopping them unless we find a way to reject them, because if we get violent with this, that's what they're prepared for. But with no remedy in court. So, the solution is to do this. What we're doing is to start a debate, start people talking, and see what comes from that, because the message is that there is something horribly wrong.
Yeah, well,
We know what the answer is, but people don't want to know that the gas is free. So how do you point them to the truly biblical, historical answer that all this has been the same story? We're still in Babylon. We're still going through the same stuff. Come out of her. Come out of her. Don't sink with the ship. You can't give a more simple message, but, people can read the Bible and not see it. I read parts of it and I didn't see what I see now.
Yeah, well, pass on that link that Jason mentioned again, because I like concentrating on too many other things. I'll take a look at it so I can give some.
Cliff High, his name.
Cliff High, right? There's a bit more, because I'm not familiar. But once I check it out, it's just having the time. Then I'll be able to say something, hopefully relatively coherent.
Well, I'll do the same, mate. I'll have a look at that one that he's recommended anyway.
And Dorian said here, religion has never saved anyone. All it does is create division. And I would agree that organized religion has been utilized in that way. But the spiritual dimension of human life, questions of meaning and purpose, why we're here, what we're about, how to maximize this life. Is it just between birth and death? Because that's what the atheists say. Or something going on beyond that? These are primordial questions that have been debated since humans first walked the earth. There's that many different opinions on it. So, like I say, we all make our claims. There are different scriptures. There are different philosophies. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to an individual's life, their experiences, and whether they decide to notice those questions and take them seriously. Because death, if we're atheists and we don't ask those questions, then death is finality. And so, maybe people need to make peace with that. But the questions that religion purports to answer don't go away just because we get rid of religion. The questions are enduring. The questions are a product of a life lived, often in suffering and pain, heartache, no simple solutions. So we have to wrestle, we have to struggle with the human condition. And people come to different conclusions about what we're here for. Some people say it's all meaningless and vain and pointless. Religion's all a scam. Others are totally committed to one particular version of faith and say all the others are wrong. The bottom line is, in our shared human condition, these questions aren't going anywhere just because we write off all the views that we don't agree with. So we still have to confront them. We still have got to confront the questions of our own mortality, our life and purpose and meaning here, and come to an answer that satisfies our own soul. So as long as we've done that, then we can give an account to any cosmic overlord at the end when he opens the books, if he opens the books, right? And we can say, yeah, I wrestle with those questions. Let's have a discussion about it. Whereas if he said, I'm not bothered, I just live for the weekend, a few beers, yeah, fair enough. You eat what you sow.
No, about religion, about relationship. I think all religions do that. They cause that division. It's purposely done. 700 religions believe in Jesus and they don't agree on anything. But if you read his own words, how can you not agree with what he says? So if there's a thing to be labelled as a Christian, it should be somebody who reads the Bible daily and tries to live that. And if you ever read the Bible, it doesn't tell you to. Apart from what you like and what you do in this world and the stuff you don't like people seeing, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just you have to stop doing what things that you did that you could do, but not really conducive when you look about it. 10 years ago, seeing more than one woman, nobody's getting hurt. It's okay. But when you read that Bible, it says you don't really do that. Should be with one person.
Well,
it kind of makes sense, but I wouldn't have heard it. I wouldn't have listened to it, Alex. Especially in my dog days, mate. It's not something I would have even thought of. I would have justified it somehow, and all of a sudden, I knew that this was different because of what it did to me when it changed me. I can't do that to anybody else.
If people, right, if Christians don't love one another, if people don't love their neighbour, if people don't love their enemy, if people don't offer something better than we see most of the time in everyday reality, I think it's pretty much clear things will continue as they always have. It'll be a power play. It'll be people clambering over the top of other people for positions of power and influence to secure their own interests. This is what the human condition is about at core, unfortunately. There's a lot of good in us, but there's a lot of self-centered. And you can say, oh, it's sin. Or you can say, no, they're just selfish. But people have to provide an account for why human beings function the way they do. They're capable of a lot more. They can be loving, they can support one another, they can build community, or they can tear it down. What we know is the oligarchs and these big players are taking it down and taking us down and protecting their own interests. Now, you know, we can see that on a philosophical level, on a political level, on the level of vested interest of human beings, or we can see it as a spiritual problem, a crisis of the human heart. And ultimately, we make choices about how we're going to live. You can live productively, you can live constructively, you can support your peers, you can love your neighbours, you can pray for your enemies if you want, or you can call that weakness like Friedrich Nietzsche did. How weak and pathetic. Don't love your enemies, kill them. Well, that's a philosophy, isn't it? And we have to decide whether all these philosophies competing in a marketplace of ideas, what have the results been? What have the results been? Do you know what
Chaos.
I mean?
More and more chaos, mate. So
more and more chaos. I'll tell you what, it's been great. I feel a bit more lively this week. I was a bit under the weather last week, Paul. But next week, I won't have any time restrictions. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get a bit longer. But I still think, like you say, we've covered a lot of ground. Thanks, everyone, for coming on. Appreciate it. And keep coming on. Come on with your ideas next week. Share with us. We've got, I can't emphasize it enough, we've got to hear your voice as well. We really do. On here, not just in the chat.
yeah, and then we're giving opinions on what what other people are talking about, as well as what me and Alex talk about. So it's, you know, it expands the conversation. So thanks, mate. I'll speak to you in a sec.
Yeah.
Again, that brilliant show, brilliant lads who came on again towards the end. Thanks for everybody in the chat room. You know, it makes a difference that there's people actually, at least in between all the banter that's going on, that they're hearing things, they're listening to things, disagreeing. It doesn't matter, but it's about starting that original conversation. You know, as for me, you well know that it all comes down to the Bible now for me, because that's how the puzzle pieces join for me. It's not about me forcing it on people. It's just, this is my story. Nobody else has walked in these shoes. Nobody else has done what I've done. Not what I've done. They might have done other things. But this is the truth that I found, and it was more than enough to change me as a man. You know, you've got to acknowledge something with that. People, there's a lot of people who have contacted me who are wondering how they go about getting a Bible, studying. I can only tell you what I did. I got the best Bible version in English I could find. I used a lexicon to make sure that I was at least in the right guidelines, and a dictionary. And therefore, then you can see all the things like fear of God. I've had people say, well, I don't want to fear of God. Like, I don't want to be in fear of a God. He's meant to love me. Fear means honour. If I did something wrong and somebody said, I'm going to tell your mum, I might have laughed. But if my dad, I'd have been crapping it. So it meant something. And that was it, not just in fear of what he might do, but I brought shame. So it's about honour. And, you know, let's put it into basics. If it's true that we are created from this God, and he saw what a mess we were in, and he'd had enough at one point, and then saw a man who'd not done anything wrong, and he said, right, we're going to do this. And it's the same plan all the way through. And only one could have lived that sinless life to live to them laws. None of us can. We have a fallen father and a fallen mother. So we're born from human, female and male. He wasn't. It's the only thing that would make sense, but it's still a story at that point. But it still makes sense intellectually. because it has to be absolutely supernatural, because you wouldn't have somebody who could be sinless, because we're born with that propensity to do naughty things. We don't teach our kids to be naughty. We teach them to be good because they're already naughty. They've got that propensity. They just know it. So for people who have contacted me who said they don't even understand it, ask, do whatever it is to what you would call praying, meditate with the Bible. Meditate doesn't mean emptying yourself. It means ask you to come and have relationship. When I do done that, I get that feeling, I get that knowing. And that's when the words mean something totally different here. So it's not just reading a story on a Bible, and it's different each time. It's a learning. It's bringing back into remembrance that our DNA has all the way back to our original root genetics. So whereas some people talk about reincarnation, oh, I've been in this life before, well, once upon a time I would have believed that. But now it's memories of that ancestral part. We could look at it as a previous life, but I've not been incarnated up till this point. But I wouldn't have known any of that without asking questions, and that's what we started this show with. You've got to ask questions. You can't keep trundling along anymore, because if you do, and again, I always bring it up, but he's such a poignant figure with what he said. Martin Niemöller, when they came for me, there was nobody left. So if you don't start asking questions about everything you've been taught, you're going to get being for a rude awakening. And I think there's a few people already seeing that rude awakening. And it's great to see that there's hope in humanity still, because it's difficult to see over the years when you've interacted with a lot of people, but I just know that there's people who just don't know. Ignorance is one thing. I can cope with ignorance. Ignorance just means you don't know something. But when you know it and you refuse to let it contradict your original belief, then that's not being humble, that's being prideful. And I haven't got time for that anymore, because I want the truth. I don't want convenient lies that will make my life feel better. No ear tickling for me. Just give me the truth. Let's spill the blood. And I don't mean physically, I mean spiritually. Let's get this sorted. Let's ask questions. Find out who we all are. You can be whatever you want. You can even be a wolf. See you next week.
Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.